Hello, I'm Blade BoQuest. So this is a video about how I made 55 billion in about 5 hours. To be honest, probably a lot less than 5 hours. So there's some really interesting things here that make this video worthy. And one of those things is that while I was making this investment originally, I turned on my webcam here and I started recording it. I have about a 20-minute span of making the investment initially back in, it must have been March, early March of 2019, and I talk for 20 minutes about the economic factors that I'm looking at, and I go into the market detail of why I think this makes sense, what's happening with the rate of inflation, the supply of currency, and supply and demand affecting these certain items. So we have kind of an unusual look. It's easy to go ahead and make an investment profit, get all of your hundreds of millions or billions or whatever, and then make a video and say, hey, here's why this worked. But here we have an authentic 20-minute capture of my thinking process going into it, and then you can look at the economic factors for yourself. So just if you only want the TLDR version of this, basically I bought 25,000 sharp shards. Hard shards were about 23,800. And all were min price except for a couple thousand of the sharps that were about 100k over that. So it cost 56 billion, right? 51. It was 51 billion that I spent in order to buy these. Eventually, I sold them at max. So that was, the whole thing became 130 billion net worth. And then after taxes, basically I got back about 107 billion. So I made 56 billion profit in a couple of hours, right? A handful of hours. Doesn't take very long to throw 1,000 on the market, you know. So it was great. It worked really, really well. I ended up selling my TET Ogre ring, my TET Tungrad earring, my PEN Nouver, my PEN Griffin, my PEN Muskan, my Vell's heart, my TET Basilisk belt, my tri-crescent in order to fund this investment. Not only did I have to leave Snake, the siege guild that I was a part of, because I had destroyed my gear by getting rid of it all, but most people thought I was quitting the game. Everyone actually thought it was completely, like I was insane. Up to this point, I have not heard of anyone selling their gear like this for an investment because we didn't have the central market. And so if you sold your gear, you're just an idiot. No one would ever sell their gear. You get a piece of gear and you have that pretty much from then on. So I took not so much a gamble because the exit strategy with sharps and hards is a very good one. Just means I'd be enhancing for months and months and months, but I could get my money out of it. So the exit strategy, my capital was protected, but the upside I made over 100% return on the investment, and only in 2 months. In 2 months of holding time and a couple hours of actually buying and selling. So I'm not going to talk too much more right now. Let's cut right to the video so you guys can see my thinking. This is, I think, one of the best captures of economics and the BDO economy and analyzing the marketplace and the supply of silver that I've ever made and I've ever seen for this game. So anyway, I've got a real treat here for you. I hope you guys enjoy it. And then at the end of the video, I'll tell you the extended version of what else happened. Hello! We're gonna do something pretty cool today, you guys. So I was looking through the market. We've got quite a depressed market pretty much everywhere you look. You got cron meals that aren't selling. If they do sell, well, they do sell. It's just they're at a loss now for the crafters. They're losing money. Got over here the draft sellers, the alchemists. They are making a profit, but the amount of work that they're putting into it is very extensive, and a lot of things outshine this. So the draft sellers are starting to dry up. If you look at the memory fragments, those prices have tanked. Overall, we just have a pretty big recessed market, no matter how you look at it. Muskan shoes, 27 mil a piece, pens sitting on the market, all sorts of crazy things. And of course we all understand how the accessories are going. Now this is because of a lot of different factors. Basically rifts, definitely, you know what, let me get into the factors a little bit later. Let me just show you what I'm about to do. The first thing I'm going to do is go over to the Bencho necklaces. Okay, so there are only a few on the market. I'm going to take all of them. So let's see here. 9 left. All right, so we're gonna grab all of these. There now should be think there'd be... Okay, maybe I just didn't hit the right price. Okay, so there are no more benchos on the market. Let's go to weapon cores. So we need to start with this. There's 140 of these, so I'm going to max price them, and I'm going to buy all of them. So what I'm doing here is buying the accessories that melt into sharps and hards. I plan on buying the entire sharp market. And by the way, there are over 20,000 sharps on the market right now. But this is going to be one of the major factors that keeps the price low, because you can just buy these accessories and melt them. So those are actually quite valuable to attain if you're making a big investment like I'm doing. So the weapon cores will melt down into 1 sharp only. The guardian seals will melt down into 1.6 sharps. Oh, actually, either I bought those all very quickly, or I guess I did buy them quickly. Okay. Alright, so we got those. Now the good deeds necklaces are actually a little bit too pricey for me. That would value a sharp at around 3 million, which I think is accurate. But if we look at the enhancement window, we have hard shards sitting at the market. There's 25,000 of these. Sharp shards, there are 21,000 of these. There are no armor stones, and there are no weapon stones. So a lot of factors have created the recession that we're currently in, quite a few. Silver was depleted out of the economy very rapidly whenever people were buying cron stones. The prices have deflated with armor due to the 3rd anniversary event where everyone got a piece of boss armor. And with the rifts now being in the game, a lot of those have just dropped. Right now there is a memory fragment event where you get these moonlight shards, and you can actually multiply how many memory fragments you have, basically. So those dropped, and a ton of people had memory fragments, myself included, before the central market, hoping to sell them at the 2.25 price. I sold them between 1.9 and 2 million whenever I saw that the market was coming down because of Cronstone silver spending. I wanted to basically get silver on hand so that my buying power would be increased. So I sold those at those price point, but now we have a lot of memory fragment stockpiles, a lot of sellers that need the silver quickly. We have more memory fragments being added into the game quicker than before. So that's dropping that price. And then we have the Sharp and Hard 3rd anniversary event. This ends tomorrow. This has been going on for 2 weeks. Every player gets 3 Sharps and Hards. This is the primary factor dropping this market right here. And if you look at things like Tungrad belts, for example, these are still relatively high. Now, this is along the lines of what this price was before we got the central market. Give or take, 50, 60 million still. We do have a recession, but this is one of the things that you can look at and kind of do an overall cost of living adjustment to see how hard recession is hitting outside of the actual factors of increased supply due to events. Another one in particular I would say would be looking at Nouvers, right? So if these were in fact dropping down based off of like just across the board, we saw accessories, we saw ogres go from 200 million to 70 million. We saw the crescents drop down to 30 million. In general, before the market, a pen weapon would be in the ballpark of 12 to 15, maybe 16 billion. So up until just an hour ago, this wasn't even on the market. So that was just out there. We've got 1 PEN Nouver dagger sitting at 17 billion. So if these prices were significantly less than this, and what I mean is the value of the items, if they're significantly less than this, you would start to see them populating this list, because sharps are endlessly available and hards are endlessly available, plus the base levels are endlessly available. So this is either a way to just crank out literally billions on end all day, or it means that the values have not tanked as much. And I think actually, to an extent, both of those are true. I think enhancing is quite profitable right now if you do it right. But what I'm saying is, even though everything looks like it's going down across the board, there are actually pretty key determining factors that allow me to properly judge inflation a little bit better than just looking at the common consumables. Another simple one would just be meat and milk. So you have meat sitting at anywhere from 4 to 6k, and that's going to basically indicate that gathering is still 30 to 40 million an hour. milk sitting at 9,000 that you can buy. The reason that's not tanked further is because there's still built-in profit there. Again, you know, it wouldn't be any less than 30 million an hour using that properly. So there's a lot of factors, and I've just looked at this game for so dang long that I can get a feel for it very quickly. And this is going to be the day that I inject my silver into the sharp market here. So one of the biggest problems that people have is they don't think the market ever turns around. They are in this crazy super high flux, and let me get rid of the webcam so you can see what I'm talking about here. Everything is going crazy, super high prices, so you can see there's actually 19,271 sharps sitting on the market, and soon those will be sitting in my bank. So we have these crazy high rushes, and I sold I mean, tens of thousands, if not over 100,000 different very valuable things like elixirs, foods, stuff like that before the central market. Everybody was waiting to sell after the central market and told me not to sell then. But I was looking at the profit margins and they were great. So against the advice I heard constantly, I sold at that point. It just so happens that that was literally the high rise of all this. And then when the market came out, sure, some of the ceilings went a little bit higher, but things like elixirs of shock, I sold 25,000 of those, or between 25 and 30,000 of those when they were 40k. And what are we looking at now? Elixirs of shock, 8,000, right? So we had this crazy run up because for the first time ever we have supply and demand actually determining the prices rather than some central controlling thing saying your time and your effort are worth this amount and no more. And you know, people are too dumb and stupid to decide things and just let them meekly perform these routine actions of brutes for a menial wage. We no longer have a system like that. We have supply and demand, and people are so not used to it, it's throwing them off and they're letting fear affect them, unfortunately. Anyway, as I always say, don't panic. And at this point, with our recession, we basically need an injection of silver and of currency. And I think the best way to do that is to take something like sharps that I believe is going to be a good investment, is going to be worth more. This is not an act of charity. I'm not quitting the game. It's not like, oh, let me help the world. I'm not claiming to be a benefactor here. I think I'm going to make some money. But looking at everything across the board, I think that the best way to revitalize the economy right now, from my position, is to get the most amount of silver into the most amount of players' hands. And this 21,000 sharps actually demonstrates a huge array of players that are just trying to sell the things that they got from their event. So this is going to be a cash infusion to almost everybody in the entire game, and when they have a cash infusion, they spend it, and then that basically gets people buying more foods and drafts and everything like that. The taxes go to the regions and those get paid out into the guilds, and currency starts circulating again. That's what drives a growing and thriving economy. So I'm going to make this investment here. Like I said, I already picked up all of those accessories because this is going to be one of the things that correlates directly to the sharp price. So I'll just go ahead and hang on to these guardian seals and these weapon cores. I got the benchos basically for good measure. I'm going to leave the hard shards for the moment for a variety of reasons, but the sharp shards, I feel like this is going to be the key right here. So let's begin. You know what, I actually found a little trick. I'm gonna do this. I think, yeah, you drag this. So you just double click. There we go. Okay. So it'll be hard to catch something like this. I'm not live streaming, so I shouldn't have much competition here. And since there's literally 21,000 people dying to get these sold, that's what this min price indicates. It basically shows it's an offer, right? They're saying, I don't want this, I want silver, but there are 21,000 other items that they're competing with first. So it's a tall order to try to get yours sold, and that's what drives the price down. That's your supply and demand. It's just based off of people's desires there and people's free choice. So we just put 6 billion into it. That's 3,800 sharps. Let's go back. And again, this should be done so quickly that very few will even recognize it happening in the first place. Not that I care about anybody interfering with it, because quite honestly, the thing to do is not to try to use your capital and try to use your influence to artificially inflate a market, right? If you're trying to buy something just to drive the price up, you're actually going to lose. The basic economic factors will make you lose. That's what I always tell people about those that attempt to do any kind of market manipulation and the pump and dump schemes. That is not a real way of creating value. Instead, what you want to do is you want to understand the actual intrinsic value of an item, right? Like I explained why I think sharps are much more valuable than the price. I explained why I think the price is, well, why there are so many on the market for the low price, and we're one day before the end of the event that has been artificially increasing that supply outside of normal game factors. So I'm value investing, right? So that's the big thing to understand. And when you're value investing, obviously you have a chance of succeeding, you have a chance of failing. But what happens is you make your profit based off of the knowledge of your knowledge of the marketplace, based off of how much you've looked at it, based off of your understanding, how many factors that you can tie together to get a correct assessment, like how I'm judging how much silver has left the economy versus how significant of a recession are we actually in. If you look at the majority of the factors, I think it would look as if we're in a much worse recession than we actually are. So I'm using all of my own judgment from playing the game and spending all of my time. So it comes from expertise first and foremost, then followed up, it comes from capital, right? So the only reason I have silver is because I've created value in the past. So if you create value, through your like a man-hour worth of grinding, you're generating a certain amount of resources. So the capital that I'm injecting right now comes from the value that I've created previously. So you have to have capital as well to value invest. And then lastly, you would need to have patience, right? Because the market changes up and down all the time, but it doesn't change on a dime. It doesn't change overnight where it's like things are worth 1 silver and then they're worth 10 billion silver. That's not how it works. So combining expertise, your knowledge of the marketplace, and combining an individual's capital with their patience. Those are the three things that allow investors to make profit. And when people look at profit of investor, a lot of times they're angry at the investor or they get mad. No, I'm obviously not talking about people that are breaking the law on Wall Street and go to jail. But people will look at legitimate investors and be very, very upset that they can buy a large amount of items. I mean, I hate to peg it on jealousy. It's probably a little bit of jealousy. It's probably a little bit of not quite understanding everything. But ultimately, remember, we're providing for the needs of the marketplace here, where all these players are asking. And yeah, I'm not out of silver, don't worry. There's another 21 billion. All these players, it's an offer. They're saying, I would rather have silver than my items. It's a request, and it's a request out to the marketplace. And then where supply and demand meets this, that's where you have the invisible hand of the market, the handshake, basically. And at that point, items are freely purchased and freely sold. And because we don't have an entirely free market, these are forced to sit actually at this minimum price, which indicates that the actual value, at least currently, based on the total economic standpoint of this market, is much lower than this. So if there was not a price floor, these would be tanked. So all these players have to wait in line for permission to sell their own items. So it's not actually a completely free market. But just understand, so that's what it is. Investing intelligently or investing badly is never a bad thing. I started with 5% of the overall net worth that I had. Oh crap. Oh dang it. Alright, I have 3,800 sharps in my inventory. So I started with 5%. And I learned, and I got better and better at buying just over time. I actually lost quite a bit But I've been practicing this, and not just for 3 years in Black Desert. I mean, this is actually what I did since I was a 12-year-old kid, and all sorts of other games. So practice it. What happens is we see profit, and we get so excited by that profit that we just think there's only going to be more and more profit, and we just continue to buy everything that we see. And then, you know, that inevitably contributes to causes and then experiences a bubble, and then it's followed by a crash. And a lot of times then you're on the exact opposite side. You feel like you're never going to be able to sell the things again. You panic sell them and you just make mistakes. So honestly, practice with about 5% of your net worth, and then that should be it. Also, make sure that you never copy another individual's actions. You know, one of the things that you see all the time in real life financial markets is people will basically say, all right, you know what, I will give you the secrets or whatever it is, or I will tell you what to buy and what to sell. The problem with that is, just by individuals giving that out, it literally changes the result of whether or not that was good advice. And that's why when it comes to long-term investing, over the years of my stream, I don't ever talk about that. When it comes to long-term investing, that's an individual's choice. And it's based off of their experience, their resources, their risk factor. So you'll probably see me do this successfully. Maybe we'll all see me do it unsuccessfully. I'm not sure. I'm happy to wait as long as it takes. I am injecting 40 billion into this, so you know, with a decent amount of time, that can double, and then it could be 80 billion. And if it does double, you know, how long would it take me to play actively to get 40 billion profit? Quite a freaking long time. So I'll be over on Xbox, I'll be making YouTube guides, and I plan to just wait this out as long as it takes, because I do believe it's not only a good buying decision, but I think it's also going to be what the market needs right now to start recovering, because I don't think the recession is as bad as the prices show. So anyway, guys, that is my morning. Got lunch with a friend IRL, but I did want to walk you guys through my thought process on this, and we'll just see what happens to the NA market, and we'll see what happens to my banks. Remember, don't let profit and don't let fear, so fear and greed, both things on either side of the buying and selling, don't let that make your buying decisions. Do not copy what another individual does, because, you know, if they're right, you made some profit and you're just going to be more trusting, and then you're going to be absolutely screwed at the end of it, because eventually they'll be wrong, and then you will lose all their money and they will lose all their money, but the person that made the decision will have purchased an education in the process, and you would have lost your money and you would have not been educated. So do not do what somebody else does. Take what somebody else does, consider it, think about it, process it, make sure what you do is the product of your own conclusion with any type of investment. All right, guys, just want to walk you through that. Let's see. So yeah, that is it's pretty exciting. So those are all the sharps. I'll probably continue to buy the sharps for another day or two, because buying out a market like that, you're not going to be able to just you know, buy them and then expect the price to completely change. The way I've always done it in the past is I've anticipated where the turning point is of prices, and then I basically just get ahead of it. So I think the prices will start to move up on their own, but I will have probably another day or two of just buying those at min price. Cool. All right, guys. Well, have a good one.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Alright, hopefully you learned a lot and you enjoyed that. So I actually finished filming the second half of this video, and it was longer than the first. That always happens to me. I have a tendency to just talk. So I'm going to end it here. We're going to go into part 2, which will be up soon on the channel, and you can hear the 3 major factors that caused the biggest NA recession and created this opportunity that I didn't dive into at that moment right there. But ultimately, I think I mentioned most, right? So I made 56 billion profit in less than 5 hours. I later bought the hards after I bought the sharps, and part 2 will explain more. Alright, guys, thanks for watching. Put in the comments what your best investment was. I'd be interested to hear.